we enter into the discussion concerning Ijma, concerning consensus as an evidence within Islam. And this comes to fruition in the history of Islamic law as we are exploring the era of the companions, may Allah be pleased with them, and how law developed during their era, and how Shariah was effectuated during their era. And the subsection that we have now come to is the question of the majority of mujtahideen, the majority of those qualified for scholarly reason. Is this sufficient in order for an item to be considered ijma'? So you have the majority of scholarship who are qualified for ijtihad, who are qualified for scholarly reason. They come to a view on an issue, a unified view on the issue, the majority of them, not all. Is that sufficient in order for this now to be considered ijma', or do we need all scholars as a whole for those who are qualified to perform ijtihad? Well, there are two views on this particular issue, and the first view is that ijma', consensus, does not occur except for when it is all of scholarship that has held a view on an issue from those who are qualified to perform ijtihad, scholarly reason. And this is actually the majority view among scholarship. The second view is that ijma', consensus, can occur so long as the majority of the mujtahideen, the majority of scholarship that is qualified to perform ijtihad takes this view. And at this point, again, it is ijma', and having one or two individuals that hold a different view has no impact on the ijma' taking hold, on the consensus taking hold. And this is what we were discussing last week, and we looked into the first view. And this first view is that ijma' only occurs when all of scholarship, from those qualified to perform ijtihad, from those qualified to perform scholastic reason, agree upon an issue. And we looked at the evidences in that regard and some of the counter arguments in that regard. So now we look to the second view. And the second view is that ijma' or consensus can occur as long as we have the majority of the body of scholarship qualified to perform scholastic reason, taking a particular view on an issue. And as is presented here, the opposition, and we look at the evidences in the reasoning now, opposition of just one or two people, and opposition of one or two people against the jama'ah, against the body of the Muslims, this is something that is considered shadh. This is not something that is considered irregular, or is considered to be something that is obscure. And something that is shadh, something that is irregular, something that is obscure, this is not paid attention to. This is something that is not considered or not looked at. And we have the prohibition of the Prophet ﷺ in undergoing what is called shudud, or being one who is shadh, being one who is irregular, or being one who is obscure. As we have the statement of the Prophet ﷺ in shadda fi nar, the one who is shadh, then he will be shadh in the fire of hell. The one who is irregular, one who is obscure, this individual will be as such in the fire of hell. And he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has also stated, alaykum sawad al-a'zam. It is upon you to be with the sawad al-a'zam. It is upon you to be with the greater blackness. And the term sawad al-a'zam that we translate as the greater blackness is upon you to be with the greater blackness. The meaning here of Sawad al-A'zam is mu'adham al-nas. It is al-aghlab. It means the majority of the people. It is upon you to be with the majority of the people. And we'll comment on this just to make a point and just to step outside of the scope, because This hadith is also often quoted in areas of aqidah, in areas of theology, and it is one of the evidences for adhering to Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. It is one of the evidences for adhering to the people of tradition and the people of unity. But the Prophet ﷺ has also stated, "Ash-shaytan ma'al wahid wa huwa min al-ithnayn ab'ad." The shaitan, Satan, is with one person, and he is further away from two people. And of course, scholarship is utilizing these evidences to prove that we don't need all of scholarship, qualified scholarship, in order to have an ijma, in order to have a consensus. We just need the majority of them. And responding to this or contrasting with this, it is possible that one could then say that if we're speaking to the issue of shudud, if we're speaking to the issue of being irregular or being obscure, then the opposition of the one who is being irregular and taking a fringe view on an issue, this is not something to be considered until after all of qualified scholarship has agreed upon an issue, consensus, and this consensus now settles in and now takes hold. As for before all of scholarship, qualified scholarship has taken a unified view on an issue, then the fringe view of one or two or a few people, this is not something that is considered shudud. This is not something that will be considered irregular, meaning that the aforementioned evidences will not apply in this situation. And it would not be prohibited for such a qualified scholar to take a minority view on an issue. So we have the evidence this way, and we have the response that way. Further evidence would be the fact that the companions themselves, the Sahaba, may Allah be pleased with them, they had some disapproval for those who oppose the majority of their body in certain masail, in certain academic issues. For we find the companions having a disapproval of Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, in his taking the view and making the statement concerning the permissibility of the mut'ah, concerning the permissibility of the mut'ah marriage. And the mut'ah marriage, it is the temporary marriage, as it were. It is to enter into a marriage with an agreement that the marriage has an expiration date that is also agreed upon. As we know, this is something that has been that has been abrogated. Yet Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, was of the view that it remained, and he was in opposition to the larger body, the majority of the companions at this time. So we find also that Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, he took the view that riba is only in nasi'ah, that what we call riba or usury, that it only exists in nasi'ah. And this is interesting because as we know, riba or usury is of two types. You have riba al-fadl and riba al-nasi'ah. And with riba al-nasi'ah, this is like, for example, the common example that we find in the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is the individual that has a large quantity of a product, but it's a lower grade, and another individual has a higher quality of a product, but it's not as much. And then you trade those two, one for the other, of the same type, like dates, for example. This is in nasi'ah. Ibn Abbas is saying that riba only occurs in this, and it is not in riba al-fadl. And if we're speaking to riba al-fadl, it is what most of us know and understand as being riba. And this is like, for example, when an individual gives a loan on some money, perhaps $100, but the person says, okay, I'll loan you the $100, but you have to pay me $130 back for the loan. This is riba al-fadl. Ibn Abbas, may Allah be pleased with him and his father, was of the view that this was not riba, but riba was only in nasi'ah. The example that we gave with having a large quantity of a lower grade product and trading that for a smaller quantity of a higher grade product of the same type. And we also find the companions having a disapproval of Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, or let me say that differently. We also find that Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, that she had a disapproval of Zayd ibn Arqam in his allowing the issue of al-ina, in his allowing the issue of ina transactions. And the ina transactions, just so that we can have some information here, the word al-in, it means cash, gold, or silver. And with the ina transaction, it's a type of a business transaction. And what occurs is that you have something that is being sold for a price to be paid at a later date. Then it is bought back at a lower price to be paid immediately. So this would mean that the buyer acquires cash and will pay back a higher amount after a while. So it is as if it is a loan in the form of a sale. And because of this is something that has been prohibited. And one of the most similar types or similar forms of this that we might think of today, we would think to one of the major reasons that caused the economic crash and the real estate crash in about 2008, when we have derivatives and what occurred with the mortgages and derivatives and such. This would be an example of that, or something that is very close to being an example of that from modern day examples. But Zayd ibn Arqam, he was of the view that this is something that is allowable, yet Aisha disapproved of him in that regard. Some of the responses to this would be that these companions were disapproved of in their individual views because of their being in opposition to the sunnah or renowned sunnahs in their particular regards, in evidences that are apparent. And it wasn't necessarily just because they were taking a view that was different to the majority, but they were taking views that some of the other companions felt were in opposition to the sunnah, so then they disapproved of that. And the preponderant view, the rajih, on this particular issue, and of course Allah knows best, is the first view, is that ijma', consensus, can only occur as a source of law and as a hujjah qati'ah, as a decisive evidence, when we have all of scholarship agreeing upon an issue, from those who are qualified to perform ijtihad, from those who are qualified to perform scholastic reasoning on scholarship. When we have all of them now taking the view, this is when we have true consensus. This is now when we have an ijma'. And if there is one mujtahid, if there is one qualified scholar to perform scholastic reasoning, and this one scholar takes a different view, so he or she now holds a minority view, and he holds this view or she holds this view before the ijma' takes place, before the consensus takes place, then it is possible that the truth is with this minority. It is possible that the truth is with this one individual amongst qualified scholarship. So then for this reason, this will not be considered ijma' at this juncture, but again, only when we have the entire body of scholarship unifying on a particular issue is it now considered ijma', consensus that is utilized as a source in Islamic law. Our next subtopic of discussion here is a question. And that question is concerning ijma', concerning consensus. Does it only occur during the era of the companions? Is it something that is particular to the time period of the companions only? May Allah be pleased with them, or can it extend beyond their era? And we have some of the people of knowledge, such as Dawood al-Zahiri, such as Ibn Hazm, and even Imam Ahmed in one of the narrations on him, that they all hold the view that ijma', that consensus, is particular to the era of the companions. That consensus is particular to the time period of the companions, and may Allah be pleased with them. And it is not possible for there to be an ijma'. It is not possible for there to be a consensus as a source in law after their era. And of course, they are all holding this view due to the high reverence that they have for the companions in their piety and in their scholarship. However, the correct view on this issue is that ijma', is that consensus can occur in every time in and every place as a hujjah, as an evidence, the same way that it existed and occurred during the era of the companions. And this is what the majority of the people of knowledge hold as true. And this is also what is proven by way of the book, by way of the sunnah, and by way of rationality. For the evidences would prove to us the authority of ijma', the authority of consensus. And these same evidences, when we examine them, they do not distinguish between one time period to another. Rather, we find that the tabi'un, the successors, or those who come after them from the scholars of this community that are qualified for ijtihad, that are qualified for scholastic reason, then when they all come to unison in agreement upon an issue, then it is ijma', then it is consensus for the entire of the ummah, for the entire of our community. And whoever opposes them, then this individual has followed a way that is other than their way. And thereafter, again, we find the ijma', we find the consensus that it is appropriate for every time period, the same as it was during the era of the Sahaba, the same as it was during the era of the companions, and it remains as a hujjah qati'ah, and it remains as a divisive or decisive evidence.